What to you makes a good stage musical? Is it a compelling story? Good comedy? Iconic characters and settings that'll be recognizable for years to come? Or is it simply just good music? There's an endless amount of shows that harnesses all these elements in so many ways. But to me, there's only one show that really takes advantage of all these aspects in the ways that has, and that is a little forgotten gem in the public eye of Broadway, known as the 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. I know, the name alone is a mouthful. Spelling Bee is a show that I would describe as a jack-of-all-trades, master of none when it comes to the previously mentioned elements. It's simple, funny, heartwarming, heartbreaking, and yet I think it does such a wonderful job at keeping focus on what it's really trying to be. So, seeing as Spelling Bee's Broadway birthday is this month, that it would be a wonderful opportunity to take a look back at this show's history, music, impact, and just its overall legacy in the musical theater world. So, without further ado, I proudly present a look back at the 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee.
Please spell telephone.
One of the most common pieces of trivia known about Spelling Bee is that it wasn't always intended to be a musical. Instead, it started out as a small little improv show done by an improv group called The Farm. This group consisted of Rebecca Feldman, Jay Ress, Dan Fogler, and Sarah Salzberg, all of which would go on to be directly involved in the final version of the show in some form. Dan, Sarah, and Jay would all go on to play their respective characters both off and on Broadway, while Rebecca would be the main conceiver for the core concept of the show itself. Rebecca and Jay were only dating at the time, and Jay actually didn't like the idea of being an actor for the show as he, quote, didn't like having to memorize lines. However, after Rebecca came up with the idea of doing a spelling bee as an improv show, they went to go see an actual spelling bee in person, and at that bee, Jay noticed the way that the guy was reading the speller's words and was basically like, oh, wait, I can just do what this guy does and read off of a binder. And yes, that is how the character of Vice Principal Douglas Panch was created. Incredible. The cast members came up with rough outlines of their characters, and they got to work. Eventually, this show would go on to be titled Crepuscule, or Crepuscule.
Well, we called it crepuscule. The word is actually pronounced, which we only found out later, crepuscule.
Either way, the show started out rough. They were quite literally at the very bottom. They had rat infestations in the building and all. There are quite barely any photos of this version of the show, and I mean barely any. These are like the only ones I know that even exist to the public right now. I'm pretty sure there's at least like a few more physical Polaroid pictures or something out there somewhere, but if there is, then they aren't getting discovered for a long time, if ever. So for now, these are the only bits of documentation of it available to the public. There is, however, video footage of the show, but we'll get to that. So, Sarah Salzberg was working for her mentor, Wendy Wasserstein at the time, and it just so happens that at that very last performance of Crepuscule, she had come to watch. Sarah was incredibly nervous about this, recounting how she kept looking at her in the audience to see if she was reacting positively or not. Probably like this. Either way, all went well because Wendy loved it. She was like, I like it, but it needs to be a musical. So, she got in contact with her good friend, William Finn. Finn was, and still is, an absolute Broadway legend, and sadly passed away just last month from an ongoing battle with pulmonary fibrosis. He had just won a Tony for his work on falsettos a few years prior to Crepuscule in 1992, and Wendy saw great potential in what he could turn the show into. So, she got in contact with him, and Rebecca and Jay went over to his house and showed him a full recording of the show that they had taken. And yes, that does confirm that there is a full video performance of Crepuscule out there in the world, just waiting to be found. Fingers crossed that one day it'll be fully revealed to the world. So, they all watched the tape together, and Finn wound up falling asleep. Clearly, this wasn't a bad thing though, as when he woke up, he immediately said they liked it, and he agreed to come on as the show's composer. From there, they brought in a woman by the name of Rachel Schenken, who would fully flesh out and develop the show's script and book. With a solid foundation for a crew, Spelling Bee had officially entered its workshopping phase. Production began in February of 2004 at the Massachusetts Berkshires, more specifically at the Barrington Stage Company down in Pittsfield. Initially, this version of the show is directed by both Rebecca and a man named Michael Barakiva. However, in July of that same year, he would be replaced by another man named Michael Junger once the show started to get fleshed out a little bit more. A few more important people to note would be Julianne Boyd as the artistic director, Dan Kay as choreographer, and Jennifer Caprio as costume designer. Word spread quickly about a brand new William Finn show being workshopped, and it wasn't too long until casting calls started going out. At this awkward point in the show's development, Spelling Bee was actually a 2-act musical. I'm not exactly sure why they eventually decided to shorten it later on, but two of the songs that we know that were cut was I Don't Remember Anything at All, which was another Rona song, and Why We Like Spelling, a large ensemble piece sort of similar to Pandemonium. But we'll talk about that one more in depth later. Words cannot describe how important and special it was that Spelling Bee had finally found its composer and its music. In a recent Instagram post, Sarah Salzberg stated, "I'll never forget the day he presented Woe Is Me. Bill barked out the whole song on one note. It was overwhelming and wonderful, and I cried afterwards. Hearing each one of those songs, day after day as he wrote them and retooled them, was having a front row seat to musical theater greatness." The show was really coming together, and of course, how could I talk about Spelling Bee without talking about the audience participation? So for those who don't know, Spelling Bee gives audience members the chance to sign up for the possibility to be randomly selected to participate in the show as a guest speller. They select 3 or 4 people right before every show and call them up after the opening number. The actors have the chance to write quick improv lines to use when they call up these guest spellers. It's just one of those things that just helps Spelling Bee stand out just a little more compared to other shows of its time. We'll touch a bit more on this aspect later on when we see how they took advantage of it, and as far as I can tell, this is an aspect of the show that's been a part of it since the very beginning of its development. Some productions now opt out of using audience members and just use made-up characters that they can easily add to the ensemble, but where's the fun in that? The workshop went on for a few more months, and after a long period of running, writing, rehearsing, and composing, and lots of auditions, Spelling Bee had now finalized its complete cast and characters of wonderfully lovable misfits. They are as follows. In terms of spellers, Dan Fogler took on the role of William Barfay, a student plagued with health problems and uses his magic foot to give himself a visual of words before saying them out loud. Newcomer Celia Keenan Bolger took on the role of Olive Ostrovsky, a lonely girl who's experiencing her first bee, and whose only real friend is a giant dictionary that she grew up reading. Newcomer Jesse Tyler Ferguson took on the role of Leaf Coneybear, a homeschooled boy who only made it because the student who was meant to take his place couldn't attend, and neither could the runner-up. He's extremely ADHD coded, and goes into a bizarre trance-like state whenever he spells. Sarah Salzberg took on the role of Logan Schwartz and Grubinier, the youngest speller competing and also the most hyper-politically aware. She has 2 very overbearing gay fathers that push her to change the world. Newcomer Deborah S. Craig took on the role of Marcy Park, an exchange student from Virginia who placed 9th in the previous year's National Spelling Bee. She speaks 6 languages, plays hockey, Mozart, gets 3 hours of sleep each night, and also isn't allowed to cry. Rob Sapp and his character of Trip Barrington were replaced by newcomer Jose Lana and his character of Chip Tolentino, a Boy Scout, a baseball player, and also the winner of last year's Putnam County Bee. However, it seems like puberty is hitting him this time, and earlier than he expected. As for the adult characters, newcomer Lisa Howard took on the role of Rona Lisa Peretti, a realtor as well as a former Putnam County Spelling Bee champion from when she was a child, returning as a moderator. Out of all the adults, she is easily the most invested in the bee. Jay Rest took on the role of Douglas Panch, the vice principal of Putnam Middle School who's returning as judge after a 5-year break that was caused by an unknown, quote, incident. He also very clearly has a massive crush on Rona. And lastly, newcomer Derek Baskin took on the role of Mitch Mahoney, an ex-convict who's doing his community service hours by comforting eliminated spellers by providing them with juice boxes. In earlier versions of the workshop, this character was played by Dashiell Eves. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. A lot of the actors, especially for the spellers, wound up basing their characters off of real childhood experiences, like Dan Fogler. In a Reddit Ask Me Anything post, he states, "I created Mr. Barfy from scratch from my own childhood angst. I turned up the dial on my allergies, and he was born." However, this is easily the most prevalent with Deborah S. Craig as Marcy Park. In the 2020 cast reunion video, she stated that a lot of the stuff in the script is based off of my own thing of winning, only sleeping 3 hours a night, and hiding in the bathroom cabinet. I scored a perfect score on the SAT when I was in 7th grade, and I won 2 spelling bees. Of course, since the plot and everything else was basically set in stone at this point, the music was as well. Here's a list of the tracks used in the show in chronological order. Now, before we move on to the next section, I feel like it would probably be best if I give you a quick summary of the show. This is your spoiler warning. If you haven't seen the show yet, please, please, please stop the video, go and watch it, and then come back. If there aren't any theaters doing it near you, then find one on YouTube. 2 of the ones I highly recommend are the Brown University production from 2018, as well as the Chapel Players Theater Group production, also from 2018. Both of them are really good and have their own strengths. I think Brown University's has incredibly charming portrayals of the characters and very clear views of their facial expressions, but Chapel's has infinitely better audio quality, as well as really fun costumes, so it's really up to personal preference as to what you prefer. For the sake of the summary, I'm just going to be using footage from the Brown University's production since, like I said, much clearer view of the facial expressions, and also just because this is easily the most popular full performance of this show on YouTube. It quite literally had its own mini fandom around it for a while. Wonder if any of these guys are still around. Anyways, let's get started. The following summary is taken directly from Music Theater International.
Miss Peretti, please spell syzygy.
Our story starts out in a school gymnasium. Longtime hostess Rona Lisa Peretti finalizes the preparations for the annual county spelling bee, reminiscing about her own spelling bee victory many years prior. The current crop of spelling contenders arrive, and this cues the title song, the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. The contestants include last year's champ, Chip Tolentino, a Boy Scout, Logan Shorts and Grubinier, the youngest and most politically aware contestant that speaks with a lisp, Leaf Coney Bear, the somewhat wide-eyed offspring of hippie parents, William Barfay, a socially awkward allergy-plagued student, Marcy Park, an overachieving Asian American, and Olive Ostrovsky, a tentative newcomer. After this, Rona then proceeds to call up the 4 guest spellers. It's quickly revealed that Olive has failed to pay her $25 entrance fee, as her mom is away in India and her dad is still at work. She was taken to the bee by a bus. But Rona assures her that it'll be worked out later. Barfay rudely fends off Olive's attempts to befriend him, and Rona introduces Vice Principal Douglas Panch, a last-minute substitute word pronouncer, and Mitch Mahoney, a menacing ex-convict who is serving as comfort counselor as a part of his community service sentence. Panch, Rona, and the spellers review the contestants' elimination-style rules. The contest begins. As the students are individually called upon, Rona provides color commentary, revealing background information about each of them. A flashback reveals that Coney Bear only made it into the contest because his school's winner and first runner-up were unable to attend due to a bar mitzvah. He appears to have no hope of spelling words correctly, but snaps into abrupt trances, during which he spells his word out correctly. Olive reflects on a lonely childhood where it is shown that her main source of companionship and spelling excellence was a large dictionary. This cues the song My Friend the Dictionary. The audience volunteers are also called up in between the canon spellers occasionally, and if they spell their word incorrectly, they're out of there. We then see Barfay use his bizarre magic foot technique to spell out his words, which involves him awkwardly sliding across the floor with his feet to write a visual for himself before saying them out loud. Rona reveals that Marcy placed high in the ranking for last year's National Spelling Bee, impressing all of the other contestants. One of the audience volunteers is asked to spell cow, prompting outrage from the contestants. The contest swings into high gear and cues up the song Pandemonium as Panch requests spellings for words that vary enormously in their level of difficulty. We then see a quick flashback of Logan drilling for the contest with her two overbearing gay dads. Leaf, for the second consecutive time, is asked to spell a word related to South American rodents. He confesses that his family does not consider him to be particularly intelligent, and this cues his main character song, I'm Not That Smart. Barfay calls upon his magic foot technique to help him spell the word Hassenpfeffer, which prompts an imagination sequence where he sings his title song, Magic Foot. Not too long after this, Chip is eliminated after getting distracted by seeing Leaf's attractive sister, Marigold, in the audience. By distracted, I mean he quite literally got a stiffy. Mitch escorts him from the stage, and just like that, the first canon speller has been eliminated. 5 remain. Rona is excited by the unexpected early elimination of last year's champion. The final audience volunteer is eventually eliminated when asked to spell a ridiculously difficult word, although it took them quite a few tries to eliminate Portet here. Mitch consoles the final guest speller, and that cues his highlight song, Prayer of the Comfort Counselor. During a snack break, Chip distributes free candy to the audience and laments the fact that his sexual arousal cost him the victory in the spelling bee, and this cues his main highlight song, My Unfortunate Erection. Chip bickers with Barfay and then proceeds to terrorize the poor guy with a packet of peanut M&Ms before being removed. Olive comforts Barfay in a very sweet moment. Barfay is ever so slightly starting to warm up to her at this point. As the break ends and the bee resumes, Logan reflects on the tremendous pressure placed on her by her dads, and this prompts her main character song, Woe Is Me. After that, a lightning-fast blaze of spelling ensues, and after an intense, long stalemate to absolutely everyone's dismay, Leaf is eliminated when he fails to spell chinchilla correctly. However, he overcomes his insecurities and realizes how proud he is of himself for making it as far as he did. With that, our second canon speller has been eliminated. Only 4 remain. After a few more rounds, Rona states to the audience that Marcy speaks 5 languages, to where Marcy corrects her before breaking out into her main song, I Speak 6 Languages. I think this is easily one of the most well-executed songs in the show. The super upbeat and happy instrumental contrasting the genuine despair that Marcy's experiencing when expressing that she's forced to be the best at everything is very disheartening. After her song, she is asked to spell the word camouflage, whereupon she rhetorically exclaims, Dear Jesus, can't you come up with a harder word than that? Much to her astonishment, Jesus Christ immediately appears and reveals that he doesn't care who wins this contest, and that's all up to her. Marcy, relieved, deliberately misspells her word, joyfully eliminating herself. With that, 3 spellers down, 3 to go. Only Logan, Olive, and Barfay remain at this point. Olive receives a phone call from her dad, but is told that she isn't allowed to answer it. Thankfully for her, Rona takes pity on her and answers the call on her behalf. Taking advantage of the pause, Logan seizes the microphone and makes a very politically charged statement. One of Logan's dads attempts to sabotage Barfay by pouring a can of Coke onto the stage while everyone's distracted, hoping that the stickiness will immobilize Barfay's magic foot. It's very subtly implied that Olive's father isn't even willing to pay her $25 fee. Realizing that her dad probably isn't even going to show up at all, Olive is called up for her turn and given the word chimerical, which means wildly fanciful and highly unrealistic. This then prompts the I Love You song, an absolutely gut-wrenching scene where Olive fantasizes about the idea of her parents loving her, as that's the idea of what something unrealistic is to her. It's easy to forget it, but at the end of the day, all of the spellers are supposed to be very young kids in context. Kids are vulnerable. they need love and attention, and this song shows that Olive doesn't get any of that. Either way, she manages to spell her word correctly, and then sits back down. Barfay is then called up to spell crepuscule, and very quickly realizes that he can't due to the Coke spilled earlier. He's nervous, and he doesn't think that he can do it, but he spells out the word anyway, without his beloved foot. And because he is the absolute GOAT, he manages to get it anyway. After that, Logan is then called up, but is unfortunately eliminated after failing to spell Vug correctly. Now, we're down to the final two. Another spelling montage starts up, and by this point, it's very clear that Olive and Barfay have bonded a lot. While still acting very competitive, they're both having fun each spelling their words, until eventually, one of them finally screws up. After several intense rounds, Olive is eliminated after failing to spell elinguescence. But Barfay hasn't won yet. He still has to spell his next word correctly in order to take home the trophy, and is asked to spell Weltanschauung. However, the word isn't his final obstacle. It's his heart. He worries that if he spells this last word correctly, it would feel like a betrayal towards his new friend. But at the same time, this is something he's worked so hard to achieve, and victory is within arm's reach for him. The pressure's on, but eventually, Olive consoles him. She tells him that it's okay, and to go for it. She realizes that even though she didn't win the competition itself, she wants something even greater. And that was her first real friend. With that, in an incredibly overwhelming moment for him, he claims a victory, and Barfay becomes the winner of the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. Panch, taking pity on Olive, invents a $25 prize for the runner-up, which he produces out of his own pocket, so that she can finally cover her entrance fee. It's a very sweet moment for him. Rona is moved by Panch's kind gesture, and Olive and Barfay warmly congratulate each other. A series of epilogues reveals the future fates of the characters and explains how their experiences during the spelling bee helped shape each of their lives. As for the adults, Panch went on to eventually have a restraining order filed on him by Rona. Rona went on to find love and host spelling bees all across the globe, and Mitch found his new passion in comforting eliminated spellers and decided to make his community service into a lifelong career. As for the spellers, Chip would survive puberty and eventually come to appreciate his erection, as did, quote, many others. Marcy would go on to write a book called Not Living Up to Expectations, which did not live up to expectations, but despite that, she's very happy. Leaf Coney Bear has cats. Yep, that's all it says about him. Logan would go on to win the 31st annual Putnam County Spelling Bee and also become the Secretary of Education. Barfay would place 42nd at Nationals and grow up to be an incredibly handsome scientist. And finally, as for Sweet Olive, she would grow up to be an incredibly loving and caring parent, as well as the host for a radio station where she'd always interview the runner-up at that year's Putnam County Spelling Bee. With that, the company sings one last song, and that humbly brings an end to the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. So, quite a lot to unpack there. It isn't the most complex or high-stakes story ever, but it's got a lot of heart. I do have a couple smaller nitpicks with the show, but again, they're just nitpicks. Doesn't really matter. And overall, I think this is an incredibly compassionate and wonderful show. So now that we know the origin and the plot of the bee, how did the world react to it? Only one way to find out.
Now watch this technique. He spells the word on the floor with his foot before speaking it aloud.
So, now that Spelling Bee's time at the Berkshires was over, it was time for the next step. Obviously, it was well into this point where the show had officially earned its full title, the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. Now that it was officially making the big move to New York, it was going to need a new director, and they got none other than the absolutely legendary James Lapine. Some of his previous director's work consists of Sunday in the Park with George, Merrily We Roll Along, Into the Woods, and Falsettos. With that, the crew got ready, and with previews beginning on January 11th, 2005, Spelling Bee officially opened its doors off-Broadway at the Second Stage Theater on February 7th of the same year. There are a lot of clips of this version of the show on YouTube, even more so than the Broadway version. If you look hard enough, you can find the full thing. Granted, they're in horrible quality, and you'll only really be able to tell what's properly happening if you've already seen the show, but at least it's something. Either way, it seems like Spelling Bee's off-Broadway endeavors were an instant smash hit, having been described as, quote, received glowing reviews, sold out its limited engagement, broke box office records at Second Stage, and extended its run. Spelling Bee didn't stay at the Second Stage Theater too long and ended its very short but also very successful off-Broadway run on March 20th, 2005. So it made the leap again, but this time, it was going to go full Broadway. Spelling Bee was going to be making the move to the Circle in the Square Theater, and was finally going to be reaching its final form on Broadway. On April 5th, all of the cast members were brought into a studio in order to start recording for the cast album in order to have it ready sometime near when the show opened on Broadway. Now, I'm not exactly sure why, but it seems like there were still quite a few 11th hour changes being made to some of the songs in the show. There are two very obvious instances of this that I noticed. The first one is that the ending to Magic Foot was a lot more anticlimactic and sudden in the off-Broadway version, as well as the previews, compared to the final version.
Better way to
The second was the main verses in Woe Is Me just having totally different lyrics altogether.
Though I practice yoga, I don't breathe. I try not to disappoint, but still I disappoint the people I love best. My two dads, unimpressed. On the rare occasions when I lose and I'm pelted by boulders, I feel the weight of the world on my undeveloped shoulders. Woe is me, woe is me, which is why I gotta win this valley. Though I practice yoga, I don't breathe. I try not to disappoint, but still I disappoint the dads who my friends mock. Kids are mean, kids will talk. All my so-called friends roll their eyes, they're incredibly petty. Because my dads are my dads, and all right, enough already. Woe is me, woe is me, which is why I gotta win this valley.
Again, I'm not really exactly sure why they decided to change it. Maybe for Magic Foot they just wanted to add a bit more spectacle since that's kind of what Broadway's known for, but I have no clue as to why Woe Is Me had so many changes done to it. Anyways, previews for the show on Broadway began on April 15th, and on May 2nd, 2005, the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee opened its doors on Broadway. I believe it was also a bit before it opened that the original set of understudies and swings were cast, and this consisted of Todd Wanapane, Kate Weatherhead, Lisa Yen, and Willis White. To say that the show was successful on Broadway would be an injustice and an absolutely massive understatement. It was able to earn back its $3.5 million budget in just a mere 18 weeks. Just for the record, it's estimated that roughly 80% of Broadway shows never wind up making their money back for their entire run. So the fact that Spelling Bee was able to make that back so quickly is very impressive, even if it's a significantly cheaper show to run due to its simplicity. On May 31st, Ghostlight Records had the honor of releasing the incredibly iconic original Broadway cast album, featuring the songs from the show in high audio quality with professional mixing. The very mysterious Why We Like Spelling song back from the Barrington workshop had managed to slip its way in as a fun bonus inclusion, despite the fact that at this point it had been totally axed from the show. Once again, we will be bringing this song up later. At this point, the off-Broadway version of the show had been nominated for 9 awards and took home a very respectable 7 out of those 9. However, now it was time for the big one. Just a few days after the cast album came out, it was the big day of the 2005 Tony Awards, a very prestigious ceremony that's basically the equivalent of the Oscars, but for theater. Spelling Bee just barely made the cut due to when it came out, but despite that, it was going to get a short highlight performance in the middle of it. It got nominated for 6 awards, which included Best Musical, Best Book of a Musical for Rachel Schenken, Best Original Score for William Finn, Best Performer by a Featured Actor in a Musical for Dan Fogler, Best Featured Actress in a Musical for Celia KB, and Best Direction of a Musical for James Lapine. Spelling Bee would wind up taking home 2 of these awards. The first was for Best Book of a Musical, for the lovable Rachel Schenken.
Unbelievable. One thing I learned writing book for a musical is that no one really knows what it is. But if you do, you know what an amazing job the other nominees in this category have done. Our book was so collaborative. I'll never be able to thank all the people I should mention, but let me start with the guy who brought us to the party, Bill Finn, for his exuberant score, and for being hard to say no to, and James Lapine for being harder to say no to. Rebecca Feldman and the actors who started this, Jay Reese for his inspired sentences, Dan Fogler, Sarah Salzberg, and our exciting ensemble for their characters and creativity. We all want to thank our producers, David Stone, Second Stage, Barrington Stage, and finally, since this is a show so much about kids trying to please their parents, I just want to say how lucky I am to have a family who makes fun of me no matter what. Thank you.
The second would be Best Featured Actor in Musical for Dan Fogler.
Hey, I was gonna dance up here and I got all choked up. I thank the theater wing and the league for the honor, and my mom and dad for the support and the DNA. And to the other nominees, you guys are superb, and the only reason I'm here is because I had 3-year head start. And my education, I thank my education, my representation, my fantastic representation. Everyone from the Theatorium, BSC, Second Stage, to Broadway, it's Circle in the Square, and all who took part in this dream collaboration, you will be thanked thoroughly on the website. My brilliant ensemble cast of lovely misfits to the Miracle Chain, Rebecca, Sarah, Wendy, Bill, James, and Mr. Stone, and I feel like Rocky right now, and she's my Adrian. Jody! We did it. And we did it with this hair and in this body. Be brave, be different. I dedicate this award to the farm, and in the words of Mr. William Morris Barfy, my whole life I've only been able to breathe through one nostril, and today is no exception. Thank you.
I personally think that Spelling Bee should have won everything, but whatever, Spamalot's cool too, I guess.
Later on in the show, they would get to do a small performance where they would sing a shortened version of both the title song as well as Prayer of the Comfort Counselor. Now, obviously, you need a guest speller to be a subject of the latter, so who did they get? They got none other than at the time political candidate Al Sharpton, which would be the first but certainly not the last of celebrity guests to participate as audience spellers. Derek Baskin was actually sick that day when they had to perform, and if you look, you can even see him reaching for a cough drop right before he has to go up. Despite that though, his wonderful voice was still as smooth as butter.
This ends, but first on our list, you should go with pride. Goodbye, Reverend. Goodbye.
what an absolutely lovely night. After the Tonys, Spelling Bee got the usual press, such as the occasional appearance on talk shows, but for the most part, it was business as usual for the next few months. That was until October 2nd, where an exclusive parent-teacher conference version of the show would be performed. It was basically a rated R, unfiltered version of Spelling Bee where they'd use even more offensive and raunchy jokes compared to the usual PG-13 ones they used. They wound up doing the parent-teacher conference nights quite a few times after this, but it certainly wasn't very often. There isn't any video of these performances, sadly, but there is a Google Drive floating around online with audio from the show. If you want access to these, hit me up on Discord, I got you. An example of one of the changes made is how, instead of Barfay spelling Hassenpfeffer during Magic Foot, he instead spells Fudgepacker. No, I am not making that up. And if you don't know what this word means, well, just look it up.
The word is Fudgepacker.
Oh, yes, of course. The art of packing fudge.
Check it out! Tom Cruise is a fudge packer!
What did you call me?
And if anyone's curious, no, my unfortunate erection is still exactly the same. Surprisingly. Later that month, the first cast member would finally take their leave from the show. Unsurprisingly, it would be Jay Ress as Panch, who left the show in order to work on other writing projects. He would be replaced by Greg Sturr. Later in the year, during November, Spelling Bee would get an exclusive pre-recorded highlight performance during the 2005 Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. So what song would they wind up choosing for this performance? Well, you can't do Pandemonium since that would be too hard to shoot, and they already did a shortened version of both the title song and Prayer of the Comfort Counselor for the Tonys, so those were off the table. And basically every other song is either way too focused on a specific character or a pair of characters. So what did they pick? Yup. You guessed it. Why We Like Spelling. This music video is such a bizarre oddity to me. Its existence is just overall very confusing. When asked about it, it seems like the original cast members don't even really remember filming this thing, and sort of just described it as a weird fever dream for them.
So I have a question for the whole cast. Do you guys remember filming for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade? Who was in charge of that filming? Who made those choices? Anybody have a comment? Jesse?
So for some reason, we sang this song that's not in our show in a gym with like setups. And at one point, like we're working out in the gym. It's very, very weird.
So
I honestly don't remember a minute of that day. I don't know why, but I don't. It went by so quickly. It was so last minute and bizarre, and yeah.
Now, I would like to take a moment to highlight a very specific person, and that person is Todd Buonapane. Those with a keen eye have probably already noticed that Barfay is very clearly not played by Dan Fogler in this music video, but rather his understudy, Todd Buonapane, despite being mistakenly credited as Dan at the start of the video. I reached out to Todd to try and get some of his insights and experiences while working on this music video, and here's what he had to say about it.
So we were going to be on the CBS parade, and Spelling Bee was hard to do clips on TV for because it wasn't like anything, and there's just not, like, you can't do Pandemonium because you can't wreck things, you can't run around.
Yeah.
And like, and then like, I think maybe like,
because Pandemonium's really the only good ensemble piece that would showcase the show very well, but
Yeah.
like everything else is like mostly about a specific character or a pair of characters, so it's difficult.
right, Or like I think they did a piece of the opening into some spelling into Goodbye for the Tonys. But like there just wasn't something to do. And so this song was in the show when it was a 2-act musical.
Mm-hmm.
And it
was
went away
supposed to
very
start
quickly.
off Act 2, just judging by like the lines.
Yeah. It went away, because Chip is already out.
Yeah, but all the other spellers are still in, and that really
Yeah.
and Leaf gets out soon after that, so I mean there's only really room for it to fit, probably to just kick off Act 2.
Yeah. So I mean they all knew it. I had to learn it because I wasn't in it off Broadway. Dan often didn't want to do those things. I think we had a lot of fun that day because we were literally just making it up as we went.
Yeah.
Like how we were going to shoot it. But I don't think it's necessarily a good representation of the show. It is kind of a fever dream. It's
yeah.
It is strange. Yeah, I don't know. We got paid extra to do it, so.
yeah, so I mean at that time, yeah, that's a good thing for you guys. Just want to say huge shout out to Todd for agreeing to do that interview. I asked him quite a few more questions about his experiences working on Spelling Bee as a swing, so if you're interested in the full 30+ minute interview, that will be uploaded in full on the second channel. Link in the description. I learned a lot of really fun insights and fun facts about some of the behind the scenes moments from him, so I highly recommend checking it out. Not to mention, he was the absolute sweetest guy when I talked to him. If you're seeing this, Todd, thanks again, man. That meant a lot to me. Spelling Bee had a couple of surprises left in December to finish off the year, one of them being at the 2005 Gypsy of the Year, where they did a spoof on Sweeney Todd. Later on in the month, as a part of the Broadway's Greatest Gifts soundtrack series, specifically Volume 7, the cast and their understudies all recorded a song called The 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee Massacres the 12 Days of Christmas, which is, as you probably guessed, a parody of the 12 Days of Christmas. New Year rolled around and the next cast member had finally announced their leave. This time, it was one of the show's leads, Dan Fogler. Dan took his leave to work on other projects and held his final performance on January 29th, 2006. He would be replaced by Josh Gad. Yes, that Josh Gad. Josh Gad, quite infamously, didn't have the greatest experience with Spelling Bee. I think he liked the show itself, but he did not get along with director James Lapine at all. He was originally offered to audition for the role for the San Francisco version of the production, but he turned it down, saying that he'd rather wait for a spot on the Broadway version to open up. He even said himself that this was an extremely selfish and stupid decision on his end. Tension started between him and James immediately during his audition, when James stopped him halfway through and claimed that he wasn't taking it seriously. He talks about the entire audition process in a video by the Off Camera Show, which I recommend checking out if you're interested. Josh wound up getting the part, but things still got quite a bit heated between them behind the scenes. He talks a lot about it in his book In Gad We Trust, so if you're curious about learning more about that, I'd recommend checking that out as well. After this point, it seems like a lot of the actors just start dropping out of the show like flies, so now would probably be a good time to go over the casting history for each character in chronological order. Barfay's casting history on Broadway consisted of Dan Fogler, Josh Gad, and Jared Gertner. Olives consisted of Celia K.B., Jessica Snow Wilson, and Jenny Barber. Leafs consisted of Jesse Tyler Ferguson, Barrett Foa, and Stanley Bohoric. Logan's consisted of just Sarah Salzberg and Sarah Inbar. Chips consisted of Jose Lana and Aaron Albano. Marcy's consisted of Deborah S. Craig and Greta Lee. Rona's consisted of Lisa Howard, Lucia Spina, and Jennifer Simard. Panch, unsurprisingly, had the most, with his consisting of Jay Ress, Greg Sturr, Mo Roca, Daryl Hammond, and Daniel Pierce. And finally, Mitch's consisted of just Derek Baskin and James Eigelhart. Obviously, the show went through that weird transition period where it had a very unique hybrid cast of both the original actors and a blend of the new ones, which is very weird to see. Interestingly enough, almost the entire replacement cast consists of members from the previously mentioned San Francisco production. It's like they all got a nice little promotion with each other. It's cute. A couple of notable things that happened to the show in 2006 was that at some point, Lisa Howard was proposed to on stage during a curtain call for Spelling Bee. She would wind up saying yes. Throughout January and into February, the very first international performance of Spelling Bee was held, all the way in Australia at the Melbourne Theatre Company. And also, while not directly related to the show itself, I feel like it would also be appropriate to honor the fact that Wendy Wasserstein also tragically passed away at this year. I feel like it's important to note how, if it wasn't for her, this show would have never gotten off the ground, and that she's really owed a lot of gratitude for making that connection to William Finn possible. Rest in peace. Moving into 2007, in January, as a part of an event for the Kids Night on Broadway, actress legend Julie Andrews from the original Mary Poppins appeared as a guest speller, as did her daughter. The word she got wrong was supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. It was a fun night, and it seems like a lot of the actors were very honored to have her take part in such a great show.
Julie Andrews was on stage sitting next to me, which was insane. I turned to her at the very beginning of the show to give her like a dirty look, and she said, "Oh, hello." It was the most amazing moment of my life.
Actually, I have a line that I sing to her in the beginning part of the show, which I realized sort of as the show was starting. I was like, oh my gosh, she's audience volunteer number 2. I'm going to be singing this line to her, and my heart stopped beating.
It's one thing to sort of just get through the show. It's a, new cast, new space for me, so have to get used to all that, but add that in, and it was a dream come true tonight. It was really incredible.
Some other notable guest appearances on Spelling Bee over the years consists of Lisa Longa, Raul Esparza, and real-life National Spelling Bee champion Carrie Close. Later that year in May, the original Spelling Bee cast would finally reunite for the first time in over a year to perform one last time, all together for 1 month in LA. This would be the last pure performance of Spelling Bee with the full original cast. To round out 2007, the Spelling Bee replacement cast would get another Broadway's Greatest Gifts track this year for Volume 9, this time parodying The Night Before Christmas with 'Twas the Night Before the Spelling Bee. Sadly though, all good things must come to an end, and it was soon announced that Spelling Bee would be holding its final performance on Broadway the following year. So, after a grand total of 1,136 performances, and over 4,000 guest spellers, Spelling Bee would close its doors after its final performance on Broadway on January 20th, 2008.
Kids that have a better way.
Will the final 2 spellers please step forward?
News about Spelling Bee stayed quiet for a while after the show closed on Broadway, minus the occasional miscellaneous performance like at the North Shore Music Theater, as well as the national tour which was still going on when the Broadway version closed. That was until August 4th, 2009 when Music Theater International, also known as MTI, announced that Spelling Bee was officially available for licensing through their website. Now, literally any theater or school across the country, or the world for that matter, could perform Spelling Bee with their own unique take and spins on the plot and characters. MTI has gone on to describe it as an extremely popular show done by smaller theaters due to the lack of resources you need for it. You don't need a huge cast, you don't need a super extravagant set or expensive costumes. With this show, most of the time less is more. Honestly, at this point, this is basically where Spelling Bee's story ends for the most part. However, there is still a couple of interesting things to note that happened to the show since then. In 2015, for a one-night performance, almost the entire Broadway cast would again reunite to celebrate the show turning 10 years old, the Actor Fund's Women's Health Initiative, and as a tribute to the show's late stage manager, Andrea Testani. I say almost the entire cast because unfortunately Celia KB wasn't able to perform, and Olive was instead played by Jenny Barber, one of Olive's replacements on Broadway. Celia did wind up attending though, and could be seen towards the end of the performance doing the final song, as well as allegedly to do Olive's final monologue. A couple of other people I was able to see in the crowd was Mo Roca, one of Panch's replacements, as well as Andrew Keenan Bolger, Celia's younger brother, who also played Leaf in the first national tour for Spelling Bee. I think there's a couple of other old cast members in there as well, but I'm not 100% sure if it's them, so I don't want to make any assumptions. Either way, it was described as a hilarious and emotional night, and to this day, there still hasn't been another cast reunion performance. Maybe for the show's 25th birthday, who knows. In 2016, the domain for Spelling Bee's official website was sold, so now the only way you can view fragments of the website is through the Wayback Machine, which is extremely tragic because this seemed like a cool novelty to look through until I found out that I was too busy playing fucking FNAF World back in 2016 instead of stopping them from executing the Spelling Bee website. In 2020, Stars in the House reunited the OBC via Zoom in order to interview them about Spelling Bee's creation, and each cast member got to share their story on how they got involved in the show. In 2021, it was revealed that a cinematic live-action adaptation of Spelling Bee was being made by Disney?
What?
Dan Lin and Jonathan Erich are set to produce, but honestly, I don't think this movie's still happening. It's been like 4 years since the initial announcement with 0 updates, and since Disney has silently canned a bunch of unknown projects over the past couple years due to their recent flops, I don't think Spelling Bee is going to get to see the light of day. I'm glad, though. I can't see them reworking into a movie and having it actually be good, so this is probably for the best. Who really knows for sure, though? In 2023, a bit of a controversy was stirred up when a production of Spelling Bee at a high school in Ohio was halted after the school deemed the source material to be too inappropriate. Obviously, this seemed understandable, as Spelling Bee isn't known to be the cleanest show, which is why MTI offers official alternate versions of certain things like My Unfortunate Erection becoming My Unfortunate Distraction, but those weren't the only problems. One of the things that they specifically highlight is the fact that Logan had 2 dads. Not anything they do specifically, it was literally just the fact that they exist. Obviously, this is a pretty harmful message to push onto people, and it caused a big enough stir that even the OBC found out about it. And a lot of them wound up reaching out to the school's cast via Zoom in order to comfort them about the situation, which is really sweet. The school would eventually allow the production to continue after 23, quote, revisions, all approved by MTI. To this day, it still isn't exactly known what the revisions are. In late 2024, one of the biggest productions of Spelling Bee ever was held at the Kennedy Center down in Washington, D.C., complete with a celebrity cast and an absolutely gorgeous set. A couple of its cast members had already done the show back when they were in school, and Beanie Feldstein, who played Logan, even said that her parents had seen the original workshop back when it was still being developed in the Berkshires. It was a pretty special production, and some of the OBC members even came down to participate as audience spellers for one of the nights. That was supposed to be the end of our story, until just a couple of weeks ago when it was teased that Spelling Bee would be returning to New York City in an unknown form. Not too much is known about this mysterious new project, whether it's another cast reunion, a transportation of the Kennedy Center production, or maybe even an off-Broadway revival. I'm willing to place my bets on the last one, but we'll just have to wait and see. They have a brand new website, so if you want updates, I'd definitely recommend staying in touch with it. Their Instagram keeps bringing up Beyonce though, so make of that what you will. So, as of right now, that's where our story ends. But I would like to circle back to that original question. What does exactly make a good stage musical? Well, it's kinda hard to say. I'll admit, Spelling Bee doesn't have a story as compelling as Newsies. I don't think it's as funny as Avenue Q. It's definitely not as iconic as Grease. And most people would probably say its music isn't as good as something like Hamilton. Even though I think it does. But that's the thing. It doesn't have to. I think what makes theater so special is the live connection between the audience and the cast. It's why theater stood the test of time, and Spelling Bee really just takes that relationship to the next level. It's a show that still resonates with and touches a lot of people, especially me, and sometimes I think that's all a show really needs to do.
There was the original Isherwood New York Times review said something like, musicals often are about big events. And it described like, a revolution in France or, all these big events that a musical can be about. And Spelling Bee is about these little events that change each one of those people forever. And I also think that you start the show thinking you're just there for a good time, and then And it usually happens when Coney Bear gets out. When you're seeing a good production of Spelling Bee, when Coney Bear gets out and the audience goes, "Oh!" and they all gasp, knowing it's a musical where everyone's going to get out at some point. They love all of them, right? And they didn't know they loved them until they were ripped away. And it's, a lot of shows like make you care about characters in a very obvious way. And I feel like Spelling Bee is sneaky in how you care about the characters. You didn't know you were going to care about these things. You thought you were just there for a good time because it was making you laugh so hard and everyone was a little bit of a weirdo. But I've directed it at a college since, and I always said, if they don't gasp when Coney Bear gets out, we're on the wrong path. Because it's so easy to just go too big and create a real cartoon. We have to know that this is a show where Magic Foot has to exist and the I Love You song has to exist. So we have to, it's a real balance of creating a reality for that show to live in. I'm so proud to have, been involved with that show.
I love Spelling Bee with all of my heart. And if you were able to sit through my voice for this long while I talk about it, maybe you do as well. So, with all that being said, all I can think of left to say now is goodbye.